of their state, outside of their little sphere, outside their franchise, potential impact. Many announcements, of course, are just about a company that is announcing new product, a new change, a new leadership, and those are very parochial. Those are very limited. We discard those. But then when you start looking deeper and deeper, you find that, wow, here is an idea, a vision, a company, a concept, a trend, a product, a service, doesn't mind what it is, that seems to be getting traction. It seems to be getting more than just media attention. It's maybe got some funding behind it. Maybe the company's hired some more people, and you start calling the people, you start finding out. And by the time we get through about the middle of the year, 3/4 of the year, we're down to maybe 15, 16, 17, 18 potential, call them subject matters, call them topics, call them trends if you like, it doesn't really matter. And then we physically will start actually allocating somebody in our organization, and sometimes somebody outside of our organization, to go and take a deep, deep, deep dive on those products. So the same way that a good agent will research their neighborhood, their schools, their community, they'll do a CMA, they'll do the pricing, they'll go visit the property. We do exactly that, the same for a trend. We'll go visit the company, we'll talk to the company, we'll take a deep dive, we'll do a CMA, we'll go learn more about that initiative or that business. And then we'll start writing something. And it will take us, 2-3 months to write a 4, 5, 6, 7,000 word analysis of that activity, that trend. Then they all come back and we put them on a table and we say, right, which one of these now really looks stronger than the other? What is the top 10? The top 10 of these that are really the ones which we think are going to have a long-term impact. We, of course, discard themes, fads, short-term changes, things that we feel there's no story behind it. There's no justification. We can't find proof that the statement which was made is really going to hold water long-term. We will discard those. We will then focus on the top 10, and we will then go ahead and write a 6,000 to 8,000 word analysis of it. Each chapter probably goes through about somewhere between 7 to 12 rewrites, as we will rewrite and clean and verify and search and verify more and scrub and clean every chapter. And by the time the chapters then, of course, go through this multiple editing process, we get to know a lot about these chapters. So it's sometimes frustrating when you see brokers or agents and they would go like, oh, yeah, I know all about that trend because I read a paragraph about it yesterday on a blog site somewhere. I mean, we've now maybe at that time spent 40 or 50 or 60 hours on one trend. So you've spent 5 minutes or 10 minutes or half an hour, and we've spent 40 hours. It's the difference as you're an expert in your neighborhood, and I walk into your neighborhood cold, and within 5 minutes I say I know what's going on in your neighborhood. I know everything about the prices in the schools in the neighborhood. Of course, that's not true. It's not possible for somebody to walk in and be as knowledgeable as somebody who took a deep dive. We take the deep dives of each topic.
When you talk about a trend, it kind of reminds me of the Dickens novel, The Christmas Carol, and the third spirit, the ghost of Christmas to come. And Ebenezer is confronted with him and he says, Spirit, are these the shadows of things to come? Or do I have any ability to change the things that are going to come? So when you talk about trends, is it a given, Stefan, that this thing is going to emerge? Or is it something in flow, it's in flux, you really don't know how it's going to end up?
A great question. A great observation, which many people don't make. So I appreciate you coming from that angle. We can't predict the future. I mean, we're no Dalai Lama. I'm not Buddha, right? I mean, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. What you can see is you can see people, leaders with money, with vision, with intent, planning a certain direction. And you get to know that certain leaders are very definitive in their actions. They're very committed to their actions. They're very tenacious in their actions. Therefore, you can say when Warren Buffett does something, his chances of success is very, very good. He's got a proven track record. Done it before. He's got the money. He's got the vision. So there is a very high likelihood that he will succeed. But of course, we do not know for certain it's going to happen. And of course, you can change it. Sure.
I don't want to say the word bias, but obviously when the trends report came up, this was Stefan Swanepoel's trends report. And now, as you mentioned earlier, you have a team of people that are doing this. Does the situation ever develop that a team member or you personally will have an affinity to one trend and you almost what you want to see it come to fruition? Is there ever that kind of, I'm sticking with this, even though the rest of the gang says, I don't think that one's going to cut the bacon.
Yes, there is no universal agreement between the T3 team. When there's 5 or 6 relatively smart people, well-read people who spend time researching a topic matter, and somebody comes up and says, XYZ is going to happen to XYZ company. No, we do not all disagree or agree on anything. It is always left to the person who is proposing, driving, or the one who did the research on a specific topic, company, vision, strategy, to convince the rest of the room, why do you think that this is different than last year? I mean, we can't just write about Zillow or NAR or Keller Williams or Redfin or Remax every single year, because some of these companies have been around for decades and decades of time. So we ask every time when something comes up that impacts the broad concept of social media or technology or data or RPR or upstream, what is different this year than last year? What's changed? Why are we bringing upstream back to the table? Why are we bringing Zillow back to the table? What is the latest initiative or news that we believe has changed it? And then that person who's covering that topic has to convince, firstly, they have to convince me, but they have to convince everybody else in the room that we believe that subject is worth the time of spending 50, 60 hours of research time and writing 6,000 words to send it to you. And yes, we have argued chapters and the survival of a chapter for 2 months before it gets either passed or killed. Yeah, sure.
And you've probably heard this question before, and I'm almost embarrassed to ask it, but of the trends, are there any trends that you've identified over the years that you thought, yeah, this one has potential, turned out to be a fizzling turd? And the other one, a trend that you've identified and was a colossal success, maybe even bigger than what you thought it would become. Not to say success or failure, but in terms of its relevancy, was it something that echoed even louder than you had anticipated?
I'm going to give you a twist to the answer, but I think the answer is still an accurate one, and I think it will please you. It's not that there is a specific trend that we correctly identified or incorrectly identified. I would almost be so bold as to say, we've almost identified every trend accurately, because again, we're not pulling a rabbit out of a hat. We're looking at things that have happened, that are in the process of happening, that are in the process of evolving and changing. So for us to predict a trend wrong is of course possible, but it's highly unlikely, because there's already momentum and traction and proof of its existence. What is, however, true, which is the point of your question, is things happen faster and way slower than we have anticipated. So to predict that mobile technology was coming, that wasn't hard. At the speed which it was coming, or the slowness of which it was coming, that we did not know. Could you see social media happening? Oh, you could see it a year or 2 or 3 before it came. But you did not realize, we did not realize, anybody did not realize the velocity, the impact, the extent by which it would shape things. So it's never the trend itself that is the aha. It's the timing, the speed, the velocity, and the impact that is always the surprise.
So let's grab those when you talk about the speed, the velocity, and the timing. One of the trends that you identified, emerging models. You talked about discount brokerages as an emerging model. And I guess my question is, what makes a discount brokerage? And the first thing we're going to get is blowback. Oh, by definition, there is no such thing as a discount. Okay, let's get over that right away. For purposes of what we're talking about here, there's a value that seems to be a midline that realtors go for when they list or sell a property. And if there's a wide variance from that, let's call that a discount for sake of argument. But that being said, what is it about these models now that have more relevance than they did, let's say, 15 years ago? Because it seems like discount brokers rise and fall with the tide.
Yes, of course, as we all know, that this is not a commission discussion, and we're not talking about, colluding any commission, and we know that commission can be negotiated for each transaction. But it is also true that there are broad, general guidelines of what often happens or does not happen. And the majority of agents do tend to charge a very uniform kind of a pricing structure. There is, however, in recent times, a renewed vigor. Maybe it's fueled by the media, but it is fueled by the pressure of Everybody wants a discount price. Everybody likes something cheap. We like buying things inexpensively on Amazon.com. We like a discount airplane ticket or frequent flyer miles. We like to go to, I don't know, Kohl's or JCPenney or Nordstrom when they are in a sale and I can get 50% off, right? So it's inbred in us to try and get something for a good price. I mean, who pays sticker price for a car anymore? So that same wave of pricing has happened and has occurred in the real estate industry. So there are a number of newer brokers, and by newer I mean people that did not exist in the company which they are today 10, 15 years ago. So they created businesses in the last 3 to 10 years where their primary business model is predicated on the fact that they are not charging the fees that have traditionally and historically been charged in the industry. So we are calling it a discount because it's a controversial, topical kind of way to describe it. But it could be anything from 1% lower all the way to 5% lower. So I mean, I've seen people charge 1%, 1.5%, 2%, 2.5%, 3%, and all the variations in between. And it's not that it's a traditional agent which is negotiable on their commission, which they all are or supposed to be or legally am to do. These are brokers or agents that go out deliberately to focus as price as a competitive advantage. They're saying it's not my brand, it's not the neighborhood, it's not my national franchise. I'm going to compete primarily on price. And they do that very well because there is a segment of the market that always appreciates a discount. Now, people would at the same time say, oh, but I also know that people will pay for good service. That is true too. Of course you will. So yes, you will. There is a large segment of the market that is price insensitive, that will pay for quality service, that will like to go buy the best product. They will buy the Apple instead of the Microsoft. They will go to the Nordstroms maybe instead of the Kohl's. They will buy the BMW, the Mercedes instead of the Ford, right? We get that. But there is an equal, if not larger group of people that actually will go to the cheaper place because they are price sensitive. And we have to understand that the market is so big today that it accommodates both segments.
Let me rephrase that question in a different way. And this comes actually from Saul Klein, our mutual friend. And he's saying, let me bring this up on the screen. And he's saying, hey, Stefan, can you talk about the forces that are accelerating the change in the industry? Let me bring that back to discount brokers because I think it ties in nicely. According to your report, when I was reading through it, there are things involved here like these companies are funded like never before. They have access to data that wasn't available before, the technology that they're leveraging. And I guess the same applies to trends in general that are happening in real estate. It's almost like it's a trifecta of these ingredients that not only are impacting the fact that you have these emerging discount brokerages, but you have new emerging models altogether. Is it fair to say that those are kind of the driving forces, or can we go deeper into what those driving forces are?
Any person can change at any time because of his own willingness or desire or focus or commitment to do so. And many people have done so over many, many years. And many such people have had success with changing models. A model, however, becomes more dangerous or more driven or more impactful when it coincides with additional forces that fuel the fire. And I think that's what you're getting to. And yes, I think that outside capital is one of those items that fuels the fire. Michael, if I'm competing against you, let's hypothetically say that both you and I are two agents. We're in the same town and we roughly work the same amount of hours. You're willing to work 60 hours a week and I'm willing to work 59, but that's close. And you've got your wife to help you and I've got my wife to help me. And you've got two agents and I've got two agents. We're going to be fairly evenly matched because we're putting in roughly amount of same kind of capital, your back pocket, my back pocket, spouses, time, hours. And you'll win one, I'll win one, you'll win one, I'll win one. But if Warren Buffett comes up to Michael and says, Michael, oh, by the way, here's 100 million to compete against Stefan. Well, even if I'm a smart guy, I'm probably going to lose now because you have $100 million more dollars to throw at the concept, at the vision, at your company, at the effort to buy human resources. And even though you might make some mistakes, it doesn't matter. 100 million allows you to make many mistakes. It will give you momentum. So yes, most certainly outside capital, additional capital, other people's money will fuel any initiative. It doesn't give you a guarantee for success. You can take money and still screw it up. I mean, money enables you, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee that the outcome is going to be what you want. Secondly, technology. Every year, every 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, technology takes another leap forward. It becomes better, quicker, faster, cheaper, more extensive, more prevalent, more omnipresent. It's everywhere. Technology does enable you to do things quicker. Now, again, technology doesn't solve all problems. It doesn't remove the belly-to-belly, eye-to-eye, one-on-one, knocking on doors, seeing a client personally, shaking their hand. That's still great. But technology does allow you to touch more people quicker, cheaper, faster. So therefore, if Michael is trying to compete against me, and Michael, you're using your feet and your hands on the telephone, and I'm using a server where I can send out hundreds of thousands of emails per day, even if a lot of these emails get lost and caught in cyberspace or spam buckets, even if just a percentage comes through, there is a strong possibility that I will be connecting with more people than you will. If I connect with more people on an ongoing basis over time, I will probably crush you. Right? So we have seen that portals like the Zillows and the Trulias, which is of course still around, and the Homes.com and the Realtor.coms on the move, we see them getting traction because they're able to touch a lot of people. So yes, there are outside forces, technology most certainly driving one, capital, as you said, most certainly driving one. And I would say probably the third one is, let's call it mergers and acquisitions or consolidation or Wall Street or Big Daddy. But as soon as companies start getting bigger and bigger and bigger, they are able to do things that small companies can't. Now, again, I'm not saying that all big companies are perfect. All big companies have their own structural problems, because if you have a big organization, the left hand doesn't always know what the right hand is doing. It takes a longer time to roll something out. You need to get multiple levels of approval. I understand that. But a big organization like a Realogy, like a Keller Williams, like in your country, a Brookfield, Roy LePage, like a Remax, like a Berkshire Hathaway, these are all very large, well-funded, well-run companies. And in most cases, when you have critical mass, you can do some things that individuals or small companies simply cannot. And that will allow them another competitive advantage. So there are three drivers that we all need to be aware of that is already changing the industry, and there's nothing we can do about it. And then the last one, but not the least one, if the person you are selling to, he himself, the consumer, the customer, the client, the Generation X, the Generation Y, the baby boomers, if your customer himself is evolving, then you need to be aware in the direction that he or she is evolving. Meaning, are they becoming more technology savvy? Are they becoming more technology literate? Do they want more discounts? Are they more mobile? Do they live on the mobile phone? Do they live on their desktop? Do they not want homes? Do they want homes? Do they buy differently? Or do they get married earlier? Are they getting single? Are they waiting a longer period of time before they have kids? Every change in your consumer profile, if it is a significant change, that change itself will change the user and the organization delivering the service. Uber is a good example, how they've changed behavior because the consumers were complaining that the existing company delivering the taxi service, the yellow cab, was not as efficient as they wanted. They were asking for something else. Uber seemed to be that company, or whether it's Lyft or Airbnb or any one of those providers. So our realtors, your realtors, the ones on the call today, the brokers, they have no choice. They have to change. They're not going to go away. They're not dying. The industry's not dying. Please stop that end of times talk. This is not bad news. This is actually good news. But it does mean that you can't sit and do nothing. It does also not mean that you can sit and do only a little bit at a time, because the velocity of outside capital, of Wall Street, of technology, of the consumers changing is all shifting the needs and the wants of our industry. And if we shift with those times, we're good. We can be winners in tomorrow. I have not a shadow of a doubt that we can be winners of tomorrow. But if we become cocky, arrogant, we ignore it, and we say, Zillow is never going to work. Really? It's already working. These consolidations which are being done by Berkshire Hathaway or Realogy, they're not profitable. Yes, they are profitable. So you have to look at the companies, and you will realize that we have to change with the times. And most certainly, I believe if you go back in history, I've now written the book on the history of real estate. I've gone back 150 years. I've looked at almost every single transaction. Sorry, I apologize. Not transaction. I mean, not real estate transaction. I mean, real estate company being bought and sold, every franchise being created, every one which was rolled up, consolidated, every major MLS activity and transaction. So I've looked at all of those, and it is clear that our industry moves in waves, in segments. And we go through sprints, almost like we race to the finish pole, then we win, then we pause for a while, and then we pick up a new race and we race again. We are most certainly again in a sprint. We are in a wave of change at the moment, which I think started, where are we now, Michael, 2018? My guess is it started around about 20, give or take a year or two, 13. So it started about 4 or 5 years ago. And this change was predominantly money-driven, technology-driven, new business model-driven. And I believe that this wave is going to be about roughly 15 years. So if it started in 2013, it's probably going to go through to 2025, maybe 2030. And during this time, we are going to redefine the way we know real estate today. How's that for you? That's a big answer.
Not bad. I'll come back to something you said earlier. I want to bring in the influence of the consumer on this. But I've got a question here from our good friend Duncan Martin, and it looks like Duncan even trimmed his beard just for this one, Stefan. So you should be flattered. I know this guy. And his question is that what do you see the future of the independent or solo agent becoming as a result of the trends and these drivers that we're talking about? And the other driver, before you answer that question, let me bring this into the mix, because in the report you allude to it, it's the consumer demand of what they want, a more streamlined transaction, almost like something of an Amazon nature. They want to be able to get onto a computer and do something seamlessly. And it seems like, if anything, the ability to do transactions online is more so difficult because of the amount of paperwork, the technology, everything. It's almost like holding back the consumer from that experience that they're looking for. So in terms of Duncan's question here, how do you see the future of the independent or solo agent? How would you tie that into what I'm asking also in terms of what the consumer is demanding of that experience and what the future is?
We have firstly experienced, both outside our industry as well as inside of our industry, that change happens slowly. So what do I see as the future of the independent contractor or the solopreneur in real estate? At this point in time, I don't think he's going to go away at all. Although consolidation is taking place, although companies like NRT, Home Services, have made huge strides and major acquisitions, and they are to be commended for what they've done, they are still fairly small and still fairly, I don't want to say insignificant, because that's not the right word. What's the word I'm looking for? They are still small as compared to the total of the industry. We still have literally thousands and thousands and thousands. I think the number is, as a matter of fact, 65,000 brokerage companies with less than 3 people. So, I mean, we still have thousands of small companies, and there is no indication that they are going to go away or be forced to go away in mass or in quantity or at a given time. That doesn't mean yet at the same time that consolidation isn't taking place. It is taking place. There's not a shadow of a doubt it's taking place. It's slow. It's over a long period of time. And even when you see that Airbnb has an enormous market share and has grown, Hilton Hotels is still strong. Hyatt Hotels is still strong. And there are still individual apartments and timeshare that are still being rented. So don't fear change, because it doesn't happen overnight. It happens, I kid you not, 15, 20 years. It takes a long time for it to change. Will there be room for a high quality, highly skilled, highly knowledgeable, highly tech savvy entrepreneur for the future? I believe the answer is affirmative, yes. But for the masses, will a large number and a growing number of people prefer, as you say, to be automated, or to use an automated service, or to use some kind of a cradle to grave, soup to nuts, click to close kind of one-stop shopping service? Yeah, the industry has always asked for it. I can find documentation going back 30 years in that. There's been always a push towards it. It's just hard to make it happen. As you said, real estate is a complex, legally driven, different in different states, with different paperwork, with different mortgage companies and different insurance companies, different title companies, different banks, and that process is still paper saturated. It's ugly. It is ugly. So we are trying to improve it. I say we, I don't mean me personally. I mean the industry as a whole. We are trying to streamline it, but it is going to take many, many, many years, probably a decade or more.
So let's bring this in here for a second, Stefan. You talked about the beast. Let's talk about the beauty. Then I've just put a screen capture here of the trends report, and just to shamelessly promote it here for a second, because you've been gracious enough to share your insights here. So guys and gals on the call right now, if you're tuning in, I have Stefan Swanepoel, and I can't call him the author of the trends report because it's a team effort. So Stefan and team have put together the 2018 trends report, which is a must read, not only for industry thought leaders, but as you can see now, it does trickle down to what we do as realtors on a day-to-day basis. So if you go to the website, retrends.com, and when you go to checkout, put in discount 10, and let me just find that here. Sure, I have it here. Here we go here. If you enter in, there's the website, retrends.com, and put in discount 10, you will get 10% off the price of the trends report. And just to let you know, Stefan and company do not do this for everyone. I had to basically beg and plead, and it's costing me another, I think Ruth is Chris. Actually, I think it's your turn, my friend. Your turn, my friend. But highly worth the money. It's something you need to know what's coming. Like I referred back to earlier with the Christmas Carol and Ebenezer Scrooge. These are not things that are necessarily going to be, but they are things that can be, and there's a high probability that they will be or maybe. So you need to be educated in terms of what's happening. It's more than just putting for sale signs on the lawn. You need to know what's happening around you, a global picture, but more so an industry oversight of what's coming. You need to know what's coming. So once again, it's retrends.com, and if you enter in discount 10, you will get 10% off. Thanks for that, Stefan. Much appreciated, my friend.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
So let's hide that. And we've got another question here. They're coming in, and I appreciate it. This one is coming from Stan. And do you see large discount brokerages dominating the market, such as Purplebricks, Redfin, and Zillow? And let me just tag that question on with one that's here from Jason, because it's similar. Do you see Redfin dominating? So I guess the overall arcing theme here, Stefan, is do you see these we'll call them relatively new incumbents, because they've probably been on the map now, 5 years, give or take? Redfin probably longer, but relatively new in the overall theme of things. How do you see them? Are they dominant players?
So I'd like to qualify the word dominating before I answer the question, and I will answer the question. I will not avoid the question. Every decade or so for the last 50 years, if you go back in history, you will see that approximately every 10 to 15 years, a new concept, a new business model is born, evolves, is birthed. And you can go back and say that the late 60s, early 70s, the concept of franchising was born, and companies such as Century 21 and ERA, Better Homes and Gardens at that time, grew very quickly as a result of using this new business model. And these are companies that grew to great positions of large market share. Now, did they dominate the market? It depends what you mean by that. If you say domination means 10%, yes. Century 21 has reached a 10% national market share, as has companies like Remax, as has companies like Coldwell Banker, as has companies like Keller Williams at the peak of the height of those organizations. But very few companies have been able to go past that. I think the highest market share I could ever find nationally of one single brand was only about 11.8%. So nobody ever dominates the market with a 30, 40, 50, 60% market share on a nationwide basis. That has never happened, and there is no indication that a Redfin or any other new company will achieve those kind of market shares. But do I suspect that Redfin and Purplebricks and other new business model companies will do well? Oh, they are already doing well. We just completed our Mega 1000, which you can go look at mega1000.com, which is a free download of the 1,000 biggest real estate companies in the nation. We've looked at the holding companies, we've looked at the franchisors, and we looked at the individual brokerage companies. Again, free PDF, mega1000.com. And on that list, based on 2017 financials, which we looked at or could obtain or did research or did a deep dive or analyzed, we've already put Redfin down as the 4th biggest real estate company in the entire US. That is very impressive for a company which is roughly basically a decade old. So they have already done very well. Are they dominating today? Oh no, they're not even close to dominating. Their market share is probably a little bit over 1%. So it's not dominating, but they're doing well. They're doing well. Now one might say that they're not profitable yet, or many people say that in the media. There are many companies which at the first years of their forming on a national basis, if you're building a company just in one zip code, one town, one state, you can get to profitability quickly. But if you're trying to build a national company, a Coldwell Banker, a Keller Williams, a Remax, many of those companies took many years. And by that, I mean 5, 10, 15 years to get to critical mass, to get to scale, to get to a solid uniform platform, and to get to profitability. So at this point in time, those companies are just acting like any other company before them. They are doing well. They haven't dominated yet, but the same way that franchising dominated the 70s, Remax or the 100% concept dominated the 80s, HFS, which became Standard, which became Relogy, dominated through mergers and acquisitions and the creation of NRT, the 1990s, how Keller Williams with their team concept and their profit sharing and their transparency dominated the 2010s. It would look like that the 2010s are going to be dominated by the Redfins, the OfferPads, the Open Doors, the Home Smarts, the Purple Bricks, the EXPs. Those seem to be the companies that are going to dominate this decade by the time we get to 2020. And I look back over 10 years.
So when you say they dominate, I guess the question becomes, Stefan, what is it that they have in common that they will be a dominant player, but the player is still here? Because looking back, when they first arrived, some of them on an Inman stage, they were actually laughed off the stage. And it's like, who's getting the last laugh now? The fact that Redfin was within your top 5 and they're still here. So I guess if I were to ask the question, what is it that these guys have in common? And it's not, I don't want to call them a threat. I don't want to call them dominant broker, but the fact that they're still here, where so many upstart companies will start and then die, these guys are here and it looks like they're serious. What do you think the commonality is?
Firstly, you're right with your comment that you said maybe people laughed people off the stage at something like Inman or any other event, doesn't matter which event. Firstly, don't do that. I'm not saying you did that, of course, but don't do that. You're just showing your ignorance by poo-pooing or laughing off any innovation off a stage or a room. Believes that you don't believe that the world's going to change and that you believe the world is going to stay the same. And that is just simply not happening in any industry, in any lifetime, on any planet, anytime soon that we're aware of. Change is something that happens consistently. What these companies are doing, they are just part of that change. It would seem that it is their time. They are innovating. It's not that the old model is broken. There's nothing wrong with the old model or the traditional model or the standard model. It's just that it's a dated model. It's something that we created a decade or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 ago. And at that point in time, it was brand new. It is still doable. We still use and support many companies and products that were created a decade or a century ago. There's nothing wrong with something that's dated, but dated companies have to constantly innovate themselves to be fresh and current and modern and relevant. And it is hard, whether you're owning Microsoft or you're owning Shell Garage or you're running JCPenney, it is hard to take a big organization and constantly renovate, innovate, relevancy yourselves. It is tough. And new whippersnapper, young, fast-moving, smaller, innovative, creative, well-funded companies will come in and they will look at all of your weaknesses. And it doesn't mind who you are. We all have weaknesses. So the young guys come and look at a big company and they look at Relogy. They don't attack Relogy on their strength. They look at the weakness of Relogy, or they look at the weakness of Keller Williams, or the weakness of the NAR, or the weakness of the traditional model. And then they go after that weakness. And they will try to exploit it. They will try to manipulate it. They will try to beat it. And sometimes they fail. And sometimes they succeed. And they will keep on trying. And it is that spirit which makes America and Canada great countries, because there is always a new guy starting a new business who wants to do it better, different, quicker, faster, cheaper. So do I think that the new companies are going to dominate? I think they are the wave of the next decade, because they are trying to do things in creative and different ways which our traditional industry hasn't quite yet been able to always adapt to. That doesn't mean that there aren't existing companies that aren't doing it well. There are many, many great companies today which have been around for many decades that have been able to already adapt, that are profitable, that are technology-driven, that are consumer-driven, that are relevant. But the industry as a whole, the collective, wow, as a collective, we're pretty stodgy, we're pretty slow, and we're pretty stubborn. And unfortunately, I have to say, we're often too arrogant for our shoes.
We'll come back to that one in a second, Stefan. For those of you that are tuning in, I'm with Stefan Swanepoel, who is author and team of the Stefan Swanepoel Trends Report 2018. And we're just going over some of the trends that are going to be impacting real estate, as Stefan and his team has identified. And just a shout out for us here at Agent Inner Circle. If you're not a member yet, please, by all means, make sure you jump over to our blog and subscribe to agentinnercircle.com. We put out weekly content, just like what you're seeing right now with Stefan Swanepoel. We try to do live interviews with thought leaders. Dead interviews are no fun. Audience doesn't really appreciate the guy snoring on the other side. But by all means, check out agentinnercircle.com. Also our YouTube channel, youtube.com, Agent Inner Circle. Please give us a like, a comment, and by all means, share this with your colleagues. Stefan, I want to thank you so far. This has been a lot of fun. I'm not letting you go yet by any means. I just want to jump over to some of the questions that we have here. And let's see, Terry, let's pull you up here. Terry says, Zillow looked at Realtor.com and improved on it. Not quite sure what he means by that, but let me scroll down. He offered a question earlier to that one. OfferPad is proof sellers do not want to go through the traditional sales process. Stefan, how would you lump those two together?
So when people say that consumers do or don't want to go through a certain process, that they cling or favoritize a certain model, it is unfortunately not always an accurate statement, simply because consumers cannot be globbed together as one single bunch of people. We often say that MLSs don't do this, or NAR or organized real estate does that. And of course, organized real estate consists of state and local, or in your case in Canada, provincial and national. And the same applies to consumers. There's Gen Xers and Gen Yers, and there's this silent generation baby boomers. And then there's the guys in the north and the south and the east and the west and this guy. So there are most certainly people that prefer a one-stop shop. There's people that prefer quick service, quick transactions, and they are willing to maybe pay for it at an additional price. There are many other consumers which again would say, I do not want to pay extra for that. I will rather go through the staging process or the open house process or whatever the process is. We don't believe that we can glob concepts or trends or brokers or agents or consumers in this case into one bucket. So there is enough for everybody. Do I believe that companies like OfferPad will gain market share? Yes, I do believe that there is a segment of the market that is willing to pay whatever the fee might be or not be for that specific service, because it is for them personally worth the extra dime if it is an extra dime. But at the same time, I do not think that equates to 80, 90, or 100% market share. The question is, if it is only 1% of the market, that model probably will not prove to be viable long-term. If it is 100%, it'll, of course, take over the market. Where is the number in between 1 and 99 or 1 and 100? I don't know. None of us know. I think that those of us which are trying to make a guess, and we are scared to make a guess, we think that that's maybe 5%, maybe 10% of the market that is willing to entertain that new model. So could they get more than that? Time will tell. We'll have to wait and see. Let's say 5 to 10% for now.
I think part of it, Stefan, and this analogy is probably used a million times, there's always going to be a segment that will buy, not that they make them anymore, but a Lada. I guess the equivalent of a Lada would be entry-level Toyota. And there will always be a segment of the market that wants a Mercedes-Benz Experience or a Porsche. So in that realm, as you say, there's always going to be room. There will be room for everybody. I can see the pie getting smaller depending on what your value proposition is. And I think, is it fair to say that as an industry, it always comes down to articulating what your value is and why it's relevant. And if you can't articulate that message, somebody with a better message will overpower yours. Is that fair to say? So
Well, yeah.
in terms of, discount brokers being pervasive, if you can't, if you try to compete on price, you'll lose every time. I mean, it's just a race to the bottom. So if you can't articulate why I don't want to say better, but obviously my services are better, or I charge more, and here's the reason why, then you have no business really being in real estate if price is the only thing that you can go against.
Yes. So price, of course, should never be the only thing that you're going up against. As you correctly stated, you should be able to package and to explain your value proposition. And your value proposition could include price. So it could include price, but it could include better service, unique service, more extensive service, less service, customized service. The consumer has proven that they like Prius, but not everybody buys a Prius. The consumer has also proven that they like BMWs, but not everybody buys a BMW. There's a segment of the market that will never buy a Prius and will buy a BMW. And there's a segment of the market which will buy BMW and that will not buy a Prius, or vice versa. And both those companies, the one which makes Prius and the ones which makes BMW, will tell you that they had a good year, that they sold more cars than ever before, and that they have happy customers. And that's okay. Why do we have to knock the one brand and say BMW is bad, everybody wants Prius because I bought a Prius, therefore it's the only car out there? It's not. There's not only one real estate model to service the consumer. There are multiple consumers. They're not one entity. There are millions and millions of people every year. Probably this year close to, if we count North America as a total, Canada and USA together, close to 6 million buyers and 6 million sellers. And many millions of extra house hunters on the website looking for a potential property. And all of your listeners today can find enough of those people to service with whichever model they want to use, as long as they do it well, as long as they do it professionally, and as long as they can show the people the value they're adding to the transaction. I will come back to you all day long. Doesn't mind what your model is.
Let me bring this. There's a question here that came from Vin, and I like this one, Stefan. It says, what do you think is the most disruptive model that's emerging? I'm assuming, Vin, which model is worth a serious look at, most innovative, and then he adds that disruptive.
Wow. Good question. I would say the most disruptive is the model that will change the existing paradigm the most. So the one which will cause the most discomfort or the most controversy to the existing model. As the existing model is propagated at the moment predominantly on independent contractors, I would say a model that threatens the independent contractor model is probably the one which would be considered the most disruptive. If I then look at the ones which would threaten the disruptor, the independent contractor model, I would probably say the employee model, if it gets off the ground on a national basis. Now, we do have a company like Redfin, and there are others, but Redfin is the best example of a successful employee-based company, and they are doing very, very well. Now, if it is a solo company, if there's only one company or one big company doing it, then it won't be this disruptive, because then they now have 1% market share. Let's say they grow to 5% or 10%, which would be incredible. If they get to 10%, I mean, we're talking an enormously large, successful company. But if the concept catches on and there is suddenly thousands and thousands of companies that use the employee model, and they are all in mass, generally speaking, successful, and we move from an independent contractor industry to a agent employee-driven industry, which, by the way, I do not think is likely. I think it's more unlikely, but not likely in the short term. If it's likely, it's long term. But if that were to happen, I think that would be the most disruptive, not only to the traditional agents, but to brokers, MLSs, and associations that are based fundamentally on critical mass. They're based on volume. They depend on numbers, right? So suddenly, if you can now have one agent who's an employee which does 40 transactions, which is what the RE/MAX kind of people do, instead of the 7 or 8 transactions, which is the average independent contractor, that would theoretically, again, I'm saying theoretically, imply that we probably have 60 or 70 or 80% too many agents in the industry. if we were, and I'm not speculating that we are, if we were to drop by 60 or 70 or 80% of the agents, yes, that would completely disrupt the industry as we know it today. That would be the biggest one, but that's all hypothetical. We have to see that happening still.
That would be an interesting model to unfold, because if it's employees, then suddenly I think that the broker has more control, management has more control, because I think one of the common complaints from consumers at large is a failure to follow up a customer service experience that's universal. And when you don't have a platform that can be universally delivered within an organization, I guess potentially if I have 100 agents in my office, I have 100 different interpretations of what customer service is. And as a broker, I can insist that here's the way we want things done, but you as an independent contractor can politely say, well, that's not the way I do it because I am an independent contractor. So from a disruption point of view, I could see that being a serious thing from the agent's perspective. I see it almost being a win for management. Is that a fair assessment?
So I think your analysis is accurate. I have no fault with your analysis, but I don't think it's complete. There's still lots of more viewpoints. At the same time, if you gain more control over an agent because he or she changes from an independent contractor to an employee, at the same time, you are also incurring significantly extra costs because you are going to have to pay that person. And that's one of the struggles which companies like Redfin have, that you now suddenly have people on your staff that might not make the cut, which means that you might have to let them go. And your payroll, your monthly payroll now suddenly becomes a very expensive item, which means that many companies will not be able to go that route because the current industry was not built around that model. And you can't just change that model. You'll have to change your entire company structure, accountability, finance, sales, volume, training. And that itself will place a heavy burden on companies which at the moment are not geared for high payroll. They're not really geared for training. They send their agents and independent contractors out to a Tom Ferry for coaching, but they don't do coaching inside. They don't do training inside. Many companies might not even have escrow officers or transaction coordinators or those kind of structures in place. They might not even have good tech in place. They might say, well, go outside and go use this technology which is available or recommended by the National Association of Realtors or by your franchise. So it will give the brokers more potential power, but it will also place upon them a significantly higher burden of responsibility, accountability, and finance, which the average broker today is not geared to accept. So it will require a shift in the type of agent as well as the type of broker. And that's why it's not going to happen just quickly. It is going to take time to evolve because we need a new agent and we need a new broker, or at least we need a change in mindset to go there. The average independent contractor agent who earns $1 million today, he's not going to accept a salary for $100,000. But at the same time, the agent that earns only $10,000 in his entire year, he would love to accept it. But as a broker, I'm not going to give it to you. Why would I give you $100,000 if you're only going to earn $10,000? So it's almost a catch-22 situation. We know where we think we can go, but we don't know how to get there.
It almost sounds, Stefan, like this is the advantage, the disruptive advantage of a new start company that is adopting that model right from the get-go, because they haven't all that infrastructure. They don't have all those additional expenses. They're building it from the ground up brand new. I guess that would give them that distinctive advantage over a well-established company that would have to painfully try to make that migration.
It most certainly does give them the advantage of not having baggage. Yes, you're right, Michael. So they don't have all this stuff they have to schlep with and reformat and rechange and restructure and change everybody's minds and interceptionalize them and change their mindset and all that. But at the same time, the new company has no momentum. It has no brand. It does not have the track record of referrals and longevity and clients again. So what it wins on the one side, it does not have on the other side. So it is very hard. That is why companies like Redfin has taken such a long time. They haven't done a lot of things wrong. They've done a lot of things right. But to start a national company from ground zero, from a cold start, and try and build a national brand, well, damn, that's hard. It's expensive, and you need to put things in place which other companies, let's say like a Howard Hanna or a Long and Foster or a John L. Scott or a Roy LePage, already have in place because they've had it for decades. So there is no simple recipe which says, here's the winning bullet. There's no silver bullet that solves everything. Redfin has many advantages. It has many challenges it has to struggle through. Existing companies have different challenges, but they also have some advantages which can carry them through. It's maximizing your strengths and strengthening your weaknesses that will allow you to leverage and optimize the best asset and the best relevance you have. Most leaders struggle with that all day long. I struggle with that. How do you always remain profitable whilst at the same time innovating yourself and changing yourself? That's tough. That's why there are consultants and coaches and mentors and apprenticeships in the world, because it's hard. It's hard.
Stefan, I've got one here. We're going to tap into that rich resource of statistics that you have. Jack is asking, what is so he says right here, the average production per agent seems to be 5 deals or less. Do you have any kind of stat, I guess a more current or legitimate stat of what the average productivity is per agent? I guess there really isn't an answer to that. If you have 2 million members of an association, the first question is how many of those 2 million are actually active realtors?
I'll give you an answer. I got one. So yes, you're right. We don't like to take the 2 million stat number because there are the part-timers and the ones that do zero, the ones which want to do a family transaction. They're the attorneys and the mortgage people in that stat. If you try and pull that number out, you don't know if you've pulled out the right number. So at the end of the day, you're dividing a potentially inaccurate number with a potentially inaccurate number. Therefore, you know that your result is going to be hypothetical. The best study we've ever been able to do is, again, the Mega 1000 we referred to. We were able to gain access to approximately 2,200 companies' statistics for the year 2017. And these are the 2,200 approximately biggest companies in the country. We did, out of the 2,200, cut them down to the 1,000 so that we are reasonably comfortable that we have the top 1,000 in the nation. We took the 1,000, we took their sales volume for the year in dollars. We took their transaction count, buy side and sell side for the year. We took the number of agents and we started dividing numbers up any way you can to try and see if we could find patterns. And then we took the outliers out. So if we found things that did not look good, or Redfin is an outlier. I mean, Redfin is the most productive company at the moment in the country, agent-wise, and Remax is a national franchise per agent is the most productive if you look over a wide base of people. So we took those ones which are big out, we took the small ones out, and we try to look at the top 1,000 companies. What is the average agent doing? And we've come to the conclusion that for the year 2017, it was 7.7 transaction sides per agent for the average full-time agent in the industry working at the moment for a productive company. 7.7.
That's almost disappointing that I didn't have a drum roll for that, Stefan. 7.7 to announce that. So again, for those of you that are tuning in right now, it's Michael Creasy here with Stefan Swanepoel. We've been talking about the Swanepoel Trends Report. I'm going to put it up here on the screen once again. If you go to retrends.com, that's retrends.com, and you go to get yourself a copy, make sure that you enter, and I'll put it up here so you can see it. The discount code is discount10. That's discount10, and you'll receive 10% off the price of the Trends Report. A definite must-read for any serious real estate professional that wants to be in the game long-term. And as I look at my sundial here, I see, Stefan, we're rapidly running out of time here. I'm going to do a selfish plug for us here as well then for Agent Inner Circle. Guys, if you're not a subscriber yet, by all means, please go over to our blog, agentinnercircle.com, and subscribe. And also to our YouTube channel, youtube.com, Agent Inner Circle. And you can show your appreciation by giving us a like, definitely a share, and leave a comment. Stefan, I'm just going to jump back over to you here. There's so many screens, not enough rocks to throw at all these windows. There we go. My friend, any parting words? Anything that you'd like to add to this bonfire that we started here today?
We are, by we, I mean our collective residential real estate brokerage industry. We are probably one of the last, if not the last, major bastionships of entrepreneurship left in North America. Many industries, be it travel, hospitality, even the doctors, the dentists, the engineers, the accountants, the car manufacturers have been consolidated, rolled up, corporatized, even commoditized to some extent. It would seem that we as the residential real estate brokerage industry will follow similar paths that travel and medicine and transport and other professional services have gone. But because we are so fiercely independent and proud of it, it is our legacy, it is our heritage. We have resisted change as a whole for an industry for a very, very long time. I think it is now our time to catch up with some of the changes. I think that the consumer expects it. I think that corporate America is funding it. I think technology has enabled it. And I think that you and I, meaning you, the listener, we can do it. There's nothing that we can't do. We don't have to be scared of the future. I believe we can change it. I think we have to have an open mind. I'm not promoting the Trends Report because we wrote it, but we spent 600 hours into it. And if you cost it out, you're probably paying 25 cents an hour for our time to do the research. There is no ads in this publication. Our sole purpose is to get you all the information, try and cull it, clean it, scrub it, sanitize it, analyze it, and put it for you in a kind of a compendium that you have it by your side. Don't read it cover to cover. It's a hard read. It's a boring read, but use it as a reference guide. If you want to understand something better, look it up. And you need to understand where we're going, because if you don't, how would you plan to get there? I don't have all the answers, but I have more answers than most people do. Why? Because it's my job to get them, and we're sharing them with you. From me to you, Michael, thank you for your time. I appreciate you putting this call together. I appreciate everybody in the industry, and I hope you guys have a wonderful, successful, healthy, wealthy, and wise career.
Stefan, I got one more. Can we slip it in here under the wire?
Sure, yeah.
This one comes from Scott Olson, and it just kind of ties up nicely what you're saying. We're living in an age of technology where data is plentiful and access is easy. Given the relative ease of interpreting data and the trend for realtors to do more and more of their work virtually, contracts are pre-written, do you see a time when the job of a realtor disappears?
Short answer is highly unlikely. Not in my lifetime, not in my immediate future. It would seem that even if technology does automate activities, it automates activities and not careers. It would seem that careers do not disappear, but tasks within the jobs of the people that are in those careers get streamlined, get automated, even shift. But that the task itself, the career itself, does not disappear. A doctor uses technology to analyze you more, but the doctor does not disappear. I understand that technology could do certain prognosis. I understand that you could go to WebMD, that you could get some kind of an analysis of whatever you want. But at the end of the day, when you want to do certain activities in life which are important, get married, buy a house, take care of your kids, take care of your health. There are times which we still need the interaction of a human that helps us interpret the importance of information so that we feel comfortable that we've made the right decision. Buying a home is a life-changing event, and I believe that the support, knowledge, and information of a realtor will be needed for many, many decades to come.
Stefan, you ever thought about running for president for NAR?
No, I'm not a political animal, and I do not care for politics at all.
My God, man, that was a speech that they would pay money for. That was brilliant. Well said, my friend. Well said. Thanks, Stefan, for all you do. I really sincerely appreciate you taking time out to come here today. I appreciate our friendship that we've had now for almost 2 decades. I was counting it on both hands and toes. 2 decades you and I have known each other. And it all goes back to, it was in New Orleans with Julie Gartengood. Julie Gartengood. We have to reach out to her and say thank you someday.
Thank you very much.
My friend, stay well, and thanks again.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.